Good morning, DCC, and welcome to another edition of Morning Coffee. The greater experience of faith is not found in finding answers, but dwelling in the unknown. And I want you to think about that. I want you to do it. I'm gonna say it again. The greater experience of faith isn't finding the answers, but dwelling in the unknown. And so I want to unpack that for us just a little bit. So Moses, if you're familiar with, the Old Testament and the story of Moses, Moses leads the people out of Egypt, right? And he's supposed to lead them onto this promised land. And so they finally, they kind of get there, and they send out scouts and spies, and they're going to look at it. And during this entire time, God has done nothing but take care of them, rescue them, show his power. He's leading them by cloud during the day, by fire at night. He's doing all of these things to make himself revealed. I'm all powerful. I'm God. I've got you. And against like untold odds, they've been, they've kind of gotten to where they are, right? Egypt, way bigger, way more powerful, way more arsenal, and yet they're able to escape. God brings in plagues, he gets them released, and then he, destroys Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea. And so there's this idea that they've seen this God reveal his power, and then Moses leads them to the promised land. They put out those spies, and out of the 12, 10 of them come back and say, "Hey, no bueno. We can't do that. These guys are giants. It's too big. It's too hard." And so here's all of this revealing of God as this all-powerful thing, the God who overcomes everything, and yet their faith was so small that only Joshua and Caleb came back. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because then when we fast forward to the end of Moses' life, right, and he's leading the people, it's come time to cross into the promised land. But one of the results of not having enough faith is God is angered, and he says, you know what? You're going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. Now think about how long that is, and think about the generations that have come that will pass, that will die and pass on through that 40-year time. And now Moses, it's time for him to pass on. And so he now takes Joshua, who had once been a young spy, right, spying out the land, who came back and said, we can do this. And now Joshua is going to get handed the mantle and lead the people of Israel into the promised land. And Moses' time is over. And imagine what the nation of Israel looks like that, right? Some of them are too young. They don't remember any of the slavery or bondage that happened in Egypt. They don't remember what it's like to be under that. And then some of them are so old, they don't care about anything. They're just weary. They've been wandering around. And so there's this sense that, you can almost feel the uneasiness. We're used to Moses the man of God, and now he's going to hand off things to Joshua, and they have to go into this promised land. You can think of the questions, right, that would be there. Like, why? Why did we have to wander in the wilderness for all this time? Why was it so difficult? Why do we have to go in and take this land from these people, and it's going to just create war, and it's going to be, why is it necessary to have to go through all this big journey? But the book of Deuteronomy tells us that Moses, right before he hands the mantle off to Joshua, he calls all the people together. And he reminds them of their identity, their uniqueness, that they've been called out by God as God's chosen people. And then he begins to retell the story of the Exodus and how they had left Egypt. And he tells that story. And then he reminds them of the law that God gave and the Ten Commandments and the rest of the law that God gave to them that guides them. And then he called them to renew their commitment to a life of obedience out of faith. And so he has this big, huge kind of powwow session with the nation of Israel. And then he says this, and I want you to key on this because this is my whole point. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our sons forever, that we may observe all the words of this law. And that's in Deuteronomy 29, verse 29. And I want to just key in on that one thing. There's so much that has been revealed. God's revealed himself. He's got a cloud. He's got a fire. But there are just some questions, some nagging questions, and the answers haven't been revealed. And yet Moses is saying, listen, that mystery, the mystery of God, that's God's. That's the unknown. That's what makes God God and what makes us human, right? And so there's this idea of letting God live in this area of mystery. He's not going to answer everything for us. He's not going to give us all the reasons why we have to suffer or to go through a journey or experience some pain or do different things that just seem so frustrating or hurtful or painful. And yet that's what we're called to. The secret things belong to God. And so that requires us to have like a live our lives in trust and faith, right? We have to trust that God is benevolent, that he loves us, that he cares about us, that he's got this big plan, that he's got this whole thing. And when we lose sight of that and we want to use our own human intuition and we want to get all the answers, it's just us trying to make sense of things. And so it's a natural desire in us, but it's not one of faith. And so what I want you to think about today is something that challenges me every day. There are things in my life that have happened, and I'm sure there's going to be more, where I don't know the answers. And I battle with God. I pray to God. I want to know, why did this have to happen? Why did it happen this way? Why can't it be easier? Why did somebody have to suffer? Why did my family or my friends or something have to go through this experience? It's too painful. And yet, at the same time, I have to live my life and remind myself that I'm putting my trust and my faith in God, that he wants to hear all those questions, but he wants me to bring them to him, but then trust him. And that's what I want you to take for today. When you are faced with questions, remind yourself of the one thing that we know. Jesus was everything that God wanted to communicate about himself in human form. He loved us. He experienced death for us. He cried when he saw loss. He understands pain. He understands questioning God. He stood, at the end of his earthly life saying, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? He knows what it's like to bring that question to God. And that has to be so reassuring to us that we don't serve a God, we don't serve a Savior, we didn't sign up to follow some God who doesn't know what it's like in our world, who doesn't know what it's like to suffer, who doesn't know what it's like to cry out and question God. Jesus has done all of those things. And that's why he's my Savior, right? And that's why he's yours. So think about that today. Don't always try to have to find the answers. Live in the mystery and give the mystery and the unknown to God. It's his. Okay? Have a good day.